Gear. Metal Gear Solid. In this game, for reasons I'm not going to get into, we're infiltrating a nuclear base. The first thing to say about this game in general is that there's not a lot of enemies. Most areas only have 2 or 3 guards on patrol at most, and there's only a handful of areas that we have to sneak through in the entire game. With that said, let's take a look at how they're structured. We have 2 guards on circular patrols around the area, and one that arrives after a couple minutes on the elevator. There are puddles scattered around the arena, and if you step in them, they make noise and they leave footprints, so you can't really stay in one place, and if you move around and the guard sees your footprints, he might track you down. For the most part, this is a small area, and there's not a lot of places to go. It's balanced out by the fact that you really just need to sit there for 2 minutes until the elevator arrives, and then jump on. The elevator will take us up to the heliport. The heliport is a very wide open area that only has 1 guard on patrol in the lower level. There's also the first appearance of snow here on the right-hand side where you can leave footprints, and if those get spotted, again, you might get found. There are some searchlights sweeping the main area where that chaff grenade sits, so you have to watch out for that if you want to cross through, and our first security camera that we can encounter is in this side room. In that side room, there's a stun grenade if you really want to just brute force your way through this next part. Now the goal here is to get into the building, and there's 2 places to do that. There's an air vent on the second floor, and there's an air vent down on the first floor, but there's a guard asleep in front of the lower one. Whichever one you choose, there are some security cameras you have to navigate around again, and on the upper level there is a guard that patrols back and forth, so there's a little bit more sneaking that you actually have to do to reach that other vent. So either way you end up in a vent, and the trade-off is that one entrance into the tank hangar is a little bit easier than the other one. Inside the buildings you'll start to see these numbers above the doors. These correspond to the ID cards that we'll find throughout the game, and you can only open a door if you have a card of that number or higher. So if you snuck in past the sleeping guard, which is a little bit trickier, then you'll enter onto the lower floor, where the elevator you need to reach is right across the room. But if you sneak in on the upper catwalk instead, then you'll come in the upper catwalk in here, and you have to go all the way around and down the stairs to sneak through from the other direction. When we make it down to B1, it's sort of a story interlude here. You have to explore the hallway to find this ladder, very conspicuously placed up into the vent, and you follow that around to meet the DARPA chief. On your way out, you'll end up in your first firefight here with Meryl, and you have to kill some guards to escape. After that, we're sent down to B2, where we're going to search around to find the entrance to the secret place where the next hostage is being held. This is kind of a fun little bit where you have to look for walls that are a different color so that you can put your C4 on them, which is something that you couldn't pick up before, and use it to blow holes in the walls. There are also these little bottomless pits that somebody dug, apparently, when they took over the base, so watch out for those. We'll be back in this room later in the game to get all the weapons and goodies that are here in the armory, but for now we just need to head into the southern portion of the area to have our first boss fight with Revolver Ocelot. At this point we've got a level 2 keycard. We need a level 5 keycard to get to the snowfield, so there's a story sequence where you have to get back in touch with Meryl and she'll open the door for you. Then we head back to the first floor so that we can escape out the laser tunnel to get to the canyon. With our level 1 and level 2 keycards, we can open up a couple more doors up here, and there's some things you might want to grab. The primary one being the mine detector, which is now in a hard-to-reach room in the far corner of the upper catwalk, and they've added a guard to the upstairs level to make it even harder. If you went out of your way to get the mine detector, this little 5-mine minefield becomes a little bit easier to pass through. Otherwise, you can just sort of get through with trial and error. And then we have another boss fight against the tank. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. It's a really wide open area. You have to get close and throw grenades into the top of the tank. So gameplay wise, it's actually one of the most interesting boss fights in the game. But as far as a boss level goes, it's just a giant field. The nuclear warhead storage building is very eventful, and we immediately have an interesting first room to start with. Only on the first floor here, weapons are banned. They don't want you firing your weapons around the nuclear warheads. So as soon as you crawl under this big door, you can't fire any of your weapons or throw any explosives. So you have to use sneaking to get through. Fortunately, again, there's not very many guards up here, and there's a very clear and obvious path to sneak to the elevator from the back of the upper catwalk. Sooner or later, we realize that we need Nikita remote control missiles to proceed, so you come to this B1 floor of offices to try to retrieve it. There are a few guards patrolling around here, and there's bathrooms on this floor, which is kind of interesting because the guards will take bathroom breaks, and there's opportunities for hijinks. We need the Nikita missiles because on the second basement floor there is this long hallway with an electrified floor, and you have to shoot a rocket down this long poison-filled hall around the side to blow up the circuit breaker and turn off the electricity. There's a lot of security cameras here and gun cameras, so you don't really have a lot of opportunity to explore at this point, but you really just need to get down and around to meet Otacon and have the next boss fight. So then there's another really short little mini game where we have to track down Meryl, who is in disguise. You have to find which of the 3 guards she is on the first basement floor and follow her into the women's restroom where you have a secret meeting. Then you get to take her with you into the next boss fight against Psycho Mantis and further on into the caves. I think the caves are kind of interesting because it's the only level in the game that's really sort of tricky to navigate by itself. It's not really clear what you can crawl under and what the right way to go is, and it's all dark, so unless you have the night vision goggles, it's difficult to make your way through. And then it's time to say goodbye to Meryl for a while. When we hit the underground passage, circumstances out of our control spiral, and we have to head all the way back to the armory to get the PSG-1 sniper rifle. If you picked up the cardboard boxes, there is an opportunity to use the truck to do fast travel between the nuclear warhead storage building and the heliport, but in my opinion, it's not really much faster than just crossing the canyon a second time. Either way, when you return with the PSG-1, you can have a sniper rifle battle with Sniper Wolf, and when you beat her, you head down this long hallway to the doorway. Unfortunately, when you reach the door, an alarm sounds, and we get sent all the way back to the tank hangar for a third time. Here, there's another minigame sequence where Snake gets tortured by Ocelot, and you can handle that however you want, and then you wake up in this prison cell. There's a single guard that's patrolling, and you have a little bit of freedom as to how you escape. I think if you take too long to escape, a character will come free you, but in the meantime, you can hide under the bed, you can use the ketchup to fake bloodstain, a few different things. When you get out, it's time to head all the way back through the caves alone. Snake is just not having a lot of luck around this communication tower, because when you get back here, you run straight into a security camera and it triggers this extended chase up 28 floors of stairs with guards chasing you. It's an infinite supply of guards, so there's no way that you can finish them all, you just have to run. Unless you want to do the Boba skip. You finally get all the way to the top, and the guards stop chasing you in order to allow the helicopter to show up and shoot a missile at you, and you immediately have to jump off the side and rappel all the way down to the bridge that crosses over. There's 3 guards stationed on this bridge. You have to kill them from a distance with a sniper rifle or Nikita. And once you get across, you can get the Stinger missiles and make your way back up the other tower. There's no guards this time, but there are security cameras every 4 floors. And when you get to the top, you have to have a proper boss battle with the Hind D helicopter. Blow that up, and you can climb back down to Otacon, who has fixed the elevator, and you can take the elevator down to ground floor with a little fight on the way. I used to find it very confusing going up and down these comm towers, so here is a high-level view of the process by which Snake goes up one tower, rappels down, crosses the bridge, up the other tower, fights a boss, and down to the floor. When you reach the floor, you have the other boss battle with Sniper Wolf out in the snowfield. There's a little bit of environmental storytelling here. Over on the right, you can see a parachute, and Colonel will even comment on it, indicating that Liquid Snake survived the helicopter crash. And we're into the final stretch. This is the blast furnace leading towards the hangar. Once again, there's only 2 guards posted in here. One is near and one is far. There is a choke point here where you have to slide along the wall underneath the crane arm, and you can get spotted while doing so. If you're adventurous, there's some body armor through the steam room that you can find, but there's a lot of cameras around it. You have to take 2 sets of cargo elevators with a small minefield in between while a lot of codec calls and a short fight advance the story, and then we have our final normal boss battle against Vulcan Raven. Now we have the final security card, and you know that we're getting close to the final boss because we run into this room with about 40 gun cameras in a very small short area. Past that is the actual hangar where Metal Gear Rex is stored. You have to climb the scaffolding around him, and it can be a little confusing, so there's a diagram on the right that shows the different levels of the scaffolding you can climb through. There's only a guard station at the very top, but there are some security cameras. When you get to the top, you have to reach the control room, and there's a series of events along with the forced alert. You do have to get the PAL key, which, depending on your performance in the game, may be eaten by a rat, in which case you have to track it down through the vents down in the water in the bottom of the area. This final endgame sequence is extended a little bit by some forced backtracking. The gimmick of the PAL key is that it has hot and cold forms that we have to get, so we have to backtrack to the blast furnace and the cold warehouse where we fought Raven. And once we return with all the different forms of the PAL key, we can trigger the final endgame sequence and the final bosses. So you fight against Metal Gear Rex after he raises the platform to the next room, and then you have to fist fight Liquid on top of the destroyed Rex. Then you can make your way out with one of the 2 characters to this little escape route. The final alert of the game is triggered when you pass through the doorway. There are a few guards you have to fight, and there's this car chase with Liquid where you make your way through a few different sequences that don't end until you deal enough damage to him. I didn't realize until I made these maps that the escape route tunnel actually leads doubling back on your original route, so you drive all the way past everywhere that we just snuck through to end up at the cliff near the beginning of the game. When you see the entire game like this from a bird's eye view, it kind of underscores that there's not a lot to it, and they make a lot out of a little by having you double back through areas multiple times, give you different gameplay mechanics in those areas in order to make it a little bit different each time, and help extend the stay in a relatively small map. Two examples of this I mentioned earlier are that in the areas that you backtrack through the most, these being the canyon and the warehouse, they add guards, they add security cameras, they add mines the second time through. These three green lines indicate where the teleport trucks are if you have the cardboard boxes A, B, and C. And I put those there because I wanted to point out that they're really not necessarily that useful. The yellow dotted line in the tank hangar is the point that you backtrack to the most. And the cardboard box A takes us back to the heliport, which is outside the tank hangar. So if you're going to use that, your options are to either sneak through the canyon again or sneak outside the heliport and then re-infiltrate the tank hangar, and neither of those are ideal. At first I thought it was interesting that you get a lot of your ID cards early in the game, but when you actually look at where the doors are located to open those cards, it makes sense that they have to give most of them to you early on so that they can actually put doors in these early buildings to make them interesting. Later on in the game you have everything, so there's not much to open, and in fact the level 7 keycard doesn't really get you anything beyond some ammo. This is just a very simple attempt to look at how the game mechanics are balanced throughout the game and how they distribute the sneaking portions and the combat portions and the unique portions of the game. So I outline how I categorize these portions here, and I think that it's nicely balanced between slow portions where you have to watch out, portions where you have to use your variety of skills against the bosses, and then unique scenarios like rappelling down the wall or navigating with the Nikita missiles. If you're going for the top ranking, the requirements are fairly tight. There are a number of alerts and kills that are required as part of the story, so you end up just being able to kill 6 guards outside of that, which is more generous than I would have expected. This is also just a look at how you can use your different arms throughout the game. These lines indicate battles or scenarios where it can be useful to deploy these weapons. Same thing here with the chaff grenades and the stun grenades. You're kind of encouraged to use those in different scenarios to keep them useful throughout. The normal grenades aren't really useful except in the tank battle, which is a little disappointing. And finally, this is a diagram of the only other aspect of the map that's included in the game. It's something that many players aren't even aware of, but there are a lot of ghosts to find. If you find the camera and take photographs of certain areas, you can see these staff ghosts. They're kind of creepy, they're kind of cool. You can't unlock anything for getting all of them, but it's a nice little feature and it's something to add some flavor to a map that you're already familiar with. I'm planning to do a companion piece to this about the VR missions because I think there's more to explore there, and those expand a lot of the mechanics that don't get a lot of attention during this game. But for now, if you're interested in looking at more of these maps in detail or you want to see more of what I've done, check out my Twitter page. Thanks a lot.